Hello, my name is Rick Ferdig. I'm the Summit Professor of Learning Technologies at Kent State University's Research Center for Educational Technology. So glad you joined us for today's webinar. Throughout the webinar, you'll have a chance to meet some of our honored guests and colleagues. Some of them you'll meet in a little bit, but I want to start by introducing our panel. We have Angela Carter from Akron Public Schools. We have Lucille Esposito from JR Foundation, and we have Eric Ling from Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy, the campus that we're actually hosting from today. So thank you to CUCA for letting us host here. If you're new to the webinars, during the pandemic, JR Foundation thought it was incredibly important to continue to support our teachers. And so they started this webinar series, and the 3 previous webinars are actually available online. You go to the website and see the work that we've done in the past. We also have a webinar coming up on January 19th, and we're proud to announce that the Educator Conference is actually coming back live on October 12th, 2023. So today we have a unique opportunity to discuss the ways in which we can adapt to students' changing needs. And there's a number of different ways that you all can participate in our conversation. First, we'll have some interactive sections where I'll ask you for some help and some questions I have. Then we'll also have an opportunity in the chat to any questions you have. Feel free during our time, and when we bring in our guest presenters, feel free to ask questions, and we'll make time to answer those questions. And then at the end, we'll also have a survey for you to complete. And that survey not only gets you registered for your contact hours, but it also helps you direct what we're going to actually do in our next webinar. So having said that, let's jump right in. So friends, the title of today's webinar is Lessons Learned, Exploring Solutions for Adapting to the Changing Needs of Students. So my question for you is, why do we need to adapt? I mean, I know we need to adapt. That's what we're called to do. Right. But why do students have changing needs?
Well, you know what? The world is changing. Our students change, and their interests, motivation, we're forever evolving. And so we have to make sure that we're keeping up with our scholars, with our students. And so learners must not only develop what they know, but their values, their skills, their attitudes. And so we want to make sure that our students are capable when they go out into the world. And part of that is making sure that we're tapping into their interests, that we're knowing who they are as learners, not just as learners, but who they are as a whole child. And so when you look at our students' differences and the things they bring into the classroom, they bring in all types of experiences. And so not only are students able to learn from one another based on, what they're bringing into the classroom, but we're looking at those things as assets to the teaching and learning environment. And so just knowing who our students are, appreciating their differences, opens up a huge door to learning. It does. What do you think, Lucille?
Well, I'll jump in here. Is that all right?
Eric,
I'm going to jump in here. No, that's great, Angela. Thanks for pointing that out. All of our students are bringing so many wonderful things into the classroom and adapting, and it's so important. What I've identified, I'm not alone in this. We know that there's significant learning gaps that are happening right now in the post-pandemic world. But when I talk to teachers, what they're discovering is all of the students in their classrooms have different types of gaps. It's really individualized because each of them have had a different lived experience trying to learn through the pandemic. Absolutely. It's really difficult for them. So they're coming in at all these different levels. Before this, teachers generally had a pretty solid understanding of or reasonable expectations of where their students should be, what they have learned last year, maybe the skills they're bringing to the class. But now that's all thrown out the window. So we have to adapt. We have to change how we do things. We have to identify tools that we can use to understand where our students are at, and then start integrating new things, new instructional techniques to help get students where they need to be. Rick, I know you got this. Talk to us about the research. What's research have to say about this?
Yeah, well, I'm going to use the word unfortunately, and unfortunately, the research data actually backs the kinds of things you're saying. So for instance, you probably saw the NAEP data that came out this past Monday. Data showed significant declines in both math and reading, including increases in those who were below basic levels in both. Now, I know there's been a lot that's been going on over the course of the last couple of years, and I know that standardized test scores aren't our only metric, but even beyond standardized testing, there was another report that was just released from Youth Truth. We'll post the link in the chat that showed over 50% of middle school and high school students said that anxiety, stress, and depression were hurting and were serving as barriers to their learning. So this is something, suffice it to say, that we need to address. And that's really why we're here today. So I think a really interesting question is to talk about how do we actually adapt and what are strategies that we can give to teachers. And so one of the strategies that I'd like to start talking about is what we call discursive positioning. Now, discursive positioning is the basic idea that we, excuse me, we as individuals are products of our social interactions. We're not fixed individuals. We can shape, reshape, and also be shaped by our circumstances and by others. So for instance, imagine how you'd feel for the audience if I called on one of you and said you were the smartest person attending this webinar. Conversely, how would you feel if you weren't that person that I called? Interestingly, discursive positioning does not have to be verbal in nature. And so Yale researchers conducted an experiment where they gave participants a cup of coffee and asked them to judge the quality of a person's character. The experiment, though, was that some people got a hot coffee and some people got an iced coffee. And it may not surprise you to learn that the people that got the hot coffee described the individual as warm and even used the word warm-hearted. Comparatively, the person who got the iced coffee compared the person as being cold or cold-hearted. So simply positioning someone with a warm or cold drink changed their perspective. So then the question is, okay, well, that's great if we're serving coffee, but what does that actually play, or how does that play out in the classroom? Well, researchers have done some interesting work, and I'm going to quote here from Crane and colleagues who said, teachers should be aware that students are sensitive to and affected by our demeanor. They also said, our findings highlight the importance of small actions perceived as recognition or kindness in everyday life. And maybe this is the most important part. When teachers promote a caring, friendly, helpful atmosphere, it's likely that students will develop positive teacher-student relationships and thrive at school. Well, that's the research, but does this play out in the classroom? And if so, how?
Absolutely. Like when you were talking, I just remember even in school myself, I remember a teacher told me, when you talk, people listen.
Yeah.
And I believed her.
Yeah.
I did. I believed her. And that stuck with me even to today. Mrs. Tankersley, she was my 12th grade teacher for language arts at Copley High School. And, I believe that we make positive deposits, and whatever you put into our students, whatever you put into our scholars is what you get out. And so like right now in Akron Public Schools, we're working on our excellence through equity vision statement. And part of that is developing a common language. And part of the common language is referring to our students as scholars. And it's gotten to the point now where we even have some of our students referring to themselves as scholars. So think about the mindset that you're creating with your scholars when you're referring to them as scholars. Like, what do you think about, it just, even though students and scholars are the same thing, scholars just has this like prestige to it. And so that's what we are trying to create with our scholars within our school district. And that's part of our vision for our students. We want them to be scholars. And so I think about even at Mason, when we were working on our positive behavior intervention supports and making sure that we're practicing saying things in the positive and that we're reinforcing positive behaviors and noticing the things that we want to see and encouraging those things, saying, for instance, things like, if we're trying to get students to do the things that we want them to do and to encourage it to continue to happen, saying things like, I like how you shared your pencil. You're such a kind person. Saying things such as, I liked how you didn't give up on that paper. You're a hard worker. Small things make a big difference. The small things that we say to our scholars make a big difference. And then even when it comes to the learning environment, one of the big pushes in Akron at one point was accountable talk. So creating a classroom environment, allowing students to know that, hey, you can have adult conversations, right? You can talk like adults by respectfully disagreeing with one another. And then you can encourage that by how you respond to students. Oh, I loved how you were accountable to your knowledge by finding where that was in your book. Right?
That's great.
I like how you are accountable to your community by not talking when Sarah's talking. So, or I like how you reiterated what Sarah said when she was talking. And then also being accountable to reasoning. So if you have an opinion, backing that opinion up with something, but then recognizing that in the student when they're doing that, that's how you create that collaborative, cooperative type of environment. And that was a big push in Akron. And some teachers still now are practicing accountable talk, and they have phrases up there that students can use. And so that's one of the big things that I noticed as it relates to making those positive deposits in our students. What about you, Lucille? What kind of things have you seen out there?
Well, it's interesting that you're talking about this because I have an example of Glover CLC, who these teachers wrote an educator initiative grant, and the entire staff has asked students to bring in mirrors, and on very durable sticky notes, they have to write something positive about themselves. And I've been there, and it's amazing. Teachers have copies of these self-affirming notes. Then students have brought in mirrors, and they cover the hallways and all of the whole Glover School. It's really cool. So when a student needs to take a moment to regroup, get back into those learning brains, because we always leave that learning brain at times, the trauma brain kicks in. They go look at themselves in the hall. Simple, what you're saying, in their mirror, and they repeat their positive mantra. Wow. What is more, teachers have copies of these wonderful positive mantras. For example, what you were just saying, when Janie writes, "I have a winning smile," teacher says, "Hey, Janie, I saw the way you smiled at Joshua today, and he was sad, and he started smiling because of you." How does that make us all feel as adults?
Powerful.
How does that?
Yes.
I agree with you both that I never called it what he calls it because he knows all the research. That kind of simple discourse makes such a difference in a young person's life.
Yeah, and discursive positioning is a fancy word, but just the concept of talking nice. And actually, it's funny you mentioned mirrors, because researchers are talking about mirror neurons, things that we have that actually mimic what other people do,
Really?
and also self-talk as well. So let's move on to a second strategy. And the second strategy, I actually need the audience's help with. And so my question for you in the audience is, what do you think the average adult attention span is? And I don't want you to just put in the chat. Actually, we're going to use Padlet to answer this. So you can either scan the QR code, or we will put the link in the chat. And for those of you who are new to Padlet, when you go to the URL or QR code, you should see a screen that looks like a chalkboard. And you can click, double click anywhere on the chalkboard to enter your answer. Or you can click on the little pink plus sign in the lower right corner, and it will also give you the option to add videos or audio. You don't have to do that. Just go ahead and type in your answer, and I'll just give you a couple seconds. How long do you think the average adult attention span is? And I know you three probably have your answer, but I'm not going to let you know. So let's see what you wrote. There we go. All right, so we've got some answers. So we've got 15 minutes, we've got 10 minutes, we've got 8 seconds. eight seconds, yeah, that's about right. So actually there's an interesting Microsoft research about 8 seconds of research, which we will talk about later. Lots of researchers have actually given various answers to that question. So for instance, some researchers have said it's anywhere between 20 and 45 minutes. You may find it interesting to note that most of that research, however, is actually from the 1960s or 1970s. And I will also suggest that commonsensibly that this change is based on age. And so, for instance, a high school student is probably going to have a greater attention span than a second grader would. But I actually want to go to some more of the more recent research. In 2010 or 11, excuse me, a researcher named Medina discussed that there's about a 10-minute sweet spot in our attention span. So does that mean we need to make all of our lessons 10 minutes long? No, I don't think so. But I think what it means is that we have to find ways about every 10 minutes to try to get students involved, to change potentially what it is that we're talking about. So Eric, what are ways you've seen people here try to capitalize on maybe a shorter attention span? You all don't have 10-minute lessons, right? Or 10-minute periods.
No.
So how do you capitalize? What ways have you seen people capitalize?
Well, I love that the research backs this up, but this is something that teachers have noticed trending in this direction for a long time. Just being in your own classroom, you see your student attention spans waned quite quickly. And so when I talk to teachers that are doing this really well, they do two basic things, I think, that any of us can apply to our classroom. So I'm going to borrow a term from business. I call it right sizing, right? And so I'm not teaching less when I teach my content. I'm just teaching at a different cadence. So maybe your learning cycle is normally I would lecture day one, and then I'd have students do an application activity day two, and then a deepening activity with group work the third day, and then assess on the fourth day. Well, how can you chunk out that content to make it a little bit smaller, right? How can I maybe have 10-minute lecture and then jump to a 15-minute activity
Mhm.
and then have them meet with their group for 10 or 15 minutes. And so trying that new strategy out might be a way that you can retain this attention span. The second thing that teachers often do that I've seen work really well is use something I call pop-up activities or pop-up learning activities. The cool thing, what you're talking about, is I don't have to do a 10-minute lesson every time, but I can reset the timer for my students by interjecting something very simple in the classroom, right? So I might notice that students' attention is waning. And my next question, I just have them turn to each other and share with one another. Or I have them write an answer to a prompt and a question, or have them participate in a silent discussion, or interject some technology into my slides so that their activity is built into what we're doing as we go through it. And the benefit of these is they're actually best practices for your classroom. And what you're going to see is you're going to increase the thinking ratio in your students.
So I want to stick with that with
Yeah.
the technology for a second. And I'm actually going to ask for the audience's help again on the technology question. And I've asked our team to actually post a number here. And this time you don't actually have to put it in chat, or you don't actually have to put it in TikTok or in Padlet, because I'm going to actually talk about TikTok. So our team should be posting it right now. What do you think that number is? I'm going to give you a clue. It's not financial. So actually that number is the number of videos with the hashtag learn on TikTok, the number of views that have been viewed on TikTok related to that. And believe it or not, that's far greater than meme hashtags, cartoon hashtags, or even Angela and Lucille's favorite TikTok dance crazes. So this has caught the attention of the marketplace, both commercially and in education. One publisher actually found that 3 out of 4 students are getting their answers from social media, more than likely either through TikTok or through YouTube. So I know there might be a temptation to say, well, this is just COVID based. And I think COVID helped that, but it's still really prevalent today. The problem, of course, is that other research has shown that at least 1, maybe even 2 out of 5 videos that are posted with this learn by TikTok or learn on TikTok actually contain false information. So the question is, Lucille, in order to be engaging to students, do teachers need to go make their own TikTok videos?
No. Nope. But on a reverse kind of scene, during a teachable moment at higher CLC, an 8th grade social studies teacher was asked this question during the discussion of early exploration. How come these explorers made so many mistakes when they were searching for the new land? Great question. 14-year-old, they get it. And the educator took that moment and answered by showing the class 2 artifacts that she had written an EIG grant for. She showed them a sextant and a spyglass. And they looked at her, that was purchased with this EIG, and said, this is what they used for navigation. There was silence. What? Then she challenged them, took it to today, as you were just talking about, and said, okay, now I want you to use your tech. You can use your phone, your apps, your GPS, your whatever, your ed technology, and to map with accuracy the way to the new world. So it's kind of a reverse kind of thing, but these kids got it. And I've been in a site visit there, and they do get it. So these are the things that are happening. You know, when we talk about even brain breaks. Yeah.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I love this. I think this is so exciting, right? Because what this tells us is that students are seeking knowledge, right? That's amazing. They don't understand something, and they're using the tools that they have at their disposal that they've learned themselves, acquired through interactions with other people, and they're trying to find the answers. Which is awesome. So how can we as teachers engage in that? And so teachers that do this well, I think, do one of 3 things. The first is a little crazy and a lot of heavy lifting. The answer is yes, you make a TikTok video, or yes, you're doing a YouTube, you have a YouTube channel. And what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I'm accessible at all times. I'm going to answer your questions, and I'm going to post some content here. And you'll have an online version of your classroom, a social space for your students to interact. And that can be really powerful when students are accessing content at any hour of the day. way. But that's some serious heavy lifting. So the second thing you can do is find the curators. Like you said, Rick, sometimes this is wrong information that they're getting, and students are going to live in this world whether we want them to or not. So how do we dive in, identify the creators that are giving them accurate information, actually helping them, and tell them this is a great resource. Go here and use this momentum that they already have toward these social media to be productive for them.
Yep.
And then finally, I think the most powerful one, the one you were talking about, Lucille, is that students create.
Yeah.
Right. How do we get them in there creating their own content? So not only are they helping each other, but they're helping future students by answering these questions as well. And that has the added benefit of developing these incredible 21st century skills of creativity and curiosity and critical thinking and all of those things.
Yeah, anybody who's heard me talk at all, the same mantra. It's
Yeah.
like we focus so much on students consuming instead of students producing.
That's right.
So I'm anxious to get to our guest speakers. Let me quickly talk about one last strategy and the data behind it. And to do that, again, I'm going to ask for the audience's help, and I'm going to ask you how you're feeling today. But in order to do that, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the URL provided in the chat box. You can also scan the QR code. And when you get there, and we're going to use this as a tool called Mentimeter. And when you get there, use your mouse or finger and simply tap on the face that represents how you feel right now. And I'll give you a second to do that. And for those of you who are new to Mentimeter, Mentimeter is another questioning tool, kind of like Padlet. But the cool thing is it also allows you to actually put images up, and then people can click on images. And so what you would actually see is you'll actually see dots on images in terms of how people are feeling. And it looks like, at least from what we're seeing, there's a little bit of a mixture of happiness and also, Lucille, you mentioned you're frazzled. So, all right. So now, obviously, I mean, we could pull this up in front of everyone and show everyone our answers, or we could do this individually, and we could actually see how students are doing and be able to respond individually to that student. So really, this is all about emotion regulation. And I think the one challenge with emotion regulation, which is what's needed, is there's so many techniques when it comes to emotion regulation. How do we begin to address this? And I think, again, what researchers are arguing is that it's not necessarily that there's one way to do it, that there's a lot of ways to do it. And so we're going to post an example. A group of researchers have posted 8 different areas for emotion regulation. And what the researchers ask us to do is we should teach and encourage our students, and I'm quoting here, to consider the emotional experiences and then use different emotion regulation strategies individually or in combination. So again, you don't have to write all that down because we'll actually share this in the chat box. But again, what I think is really interesting about these is the green thumbs up and the red thumbs down. There's positives and negatives to each of these. And I think what's important is not just that we're aware of these, but that we can start to identify what our students are doing to be able to support them more.
Right.
Angela, have you actually, or how have you seen this emotion regulation in your students and your teachers?
Actually, a few years ago, we brought in zones of regulation, and we did a whole 6-hour option, which is like 3 2-hour sessions of professional development based on the book Zones Regulations. And in that book, it talks about teaching children about their feelings and helping them understand what these feelings mean and how do I usually react when I have a certain feeling, and then actually teaching them or giving them options on, if you have a negative feeling, options that you can use in order to help with regulating that so that you can get yourself back on task. And so, we got together, we created our zones of regulation boards, and these boards were check-in, check-out boards for students. So when you're coming into the classroom, if you put some teachers made boards with the pockets with the student's name, and they had sticks that were different colors. If you put a green stick in there, that lets me know that, hey, you're good to go. If you put a yellow stick in there, it's like, And if I put a red stick in, that means, okay, I may need to come and, check in with you right away to find out, what's going on. So that was zones of regulation, for our students. And then for our teachers, as it relates to understanding your emotions and checking your emotions daily throughout the day, being able to make sure that you have having strategies in your pocket. And so we did a book study, Teaching Love and Logic. And in this book, it talks about having phrases ready to go for if a child is acting out, or if you need to redirect a student, so that you're prepared. So you're not going to act on your emotions.
Mhm.
You're going to regulate yourself and use that phrase that you practice in order to help with redirecting so that you're not saying the wrong things. And so this is something that's good for students and it's good for teachers in order to help with enhancing the classroom and making it a safe place for everyone if we have strategies in place for our students and our teachers.
No, that's great. And I think we talked about before, we could probably talk forever about the different strategies, but I think if we talk about discursive positioning, we talk about thinking about attention. I think we talk about diffusion and dissemination of content in various ways, including through things like Padlet and Mentimeter. And then I think as we talk about emotional regulation, I think those are different strategies that teachers can use to meet these changing needs. But the good news is we also have two exciting projects that have happened here in Summit County. And Lucille, would you introduce the first one for us?
Well, first of all, we're going to listen to Edie, who will be from Bridges Learning Center in Akron Public Schools. And she will share their grant, their EIG, that encompasses both art and music therapy for students in grades kindergarten through 12. It's amazing what you're going to see.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Ling, representing the GAR Foundation. And today we're talking to two incredible educators who wrote educator initiative grants and were awarded monies for those grants. One of the most overlooked benefits of writing a grant is that you actually get plugged into an incredible community of innovative educators. So I'm excited to introduce you to two of them today, Edie and Shenan. I'm going to have them introduce themselves a little bit, tell us what they do here at Bridges Learning Center, and then we'll dive into the project itself.
I am Shenan May. I am the art therapist at Bridges Learning Center, and I've been in the Akron Public Schools for 23 years.
I'm Edie Steiner, and I'm a music therapist at Bridges Learning Center, and I've also been with Akron Public Schools for 23 years, and Shenan was my first work friend.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, great to meet both of you, and thank you for spending some time with us today to help inspire other educators across Summit County. We're going to get into the incredible project here in a little bit, but I want to go back to the very beginning, to the start, to the inspirational moment when you decided that the normal thing that you were doing probably wasn't going to continue to work. You decided to put down pen to paper and try something innovative. What was that beginning like?
The beginning was us noticing what the students were bringing forward whenever they were coming to art and music therapy. They were starting to bring a lot of digital art, a lot of cartoon work, and even trying to do small pieces of music production within their homes. Yeah. So we knew that we had to become relevant and begin to learn these things if they were what our students needed to access in order to meet and reach their goals that they had for themselves educationally.
So we started thinking what we could do, and we have these not posters, but artworks hanging on the wall in the music therapy studio, and there are song lyrics on them, very popular song lyrics that are fun and inspiring. Yeah. And we thought, well, wouldn't that be awesome to do with the kids' words, their own words, and put it into music and put it into art. A mantra, a positive mantra that they can take with them throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout their lives. And we just put music therapy and art therapy together.
Yes, so we were able to do music production, then on the side of that, give them either a QR code or link the song to their files in their Google Drive, and then they could listen to that music anytime they wanted while looking at the artwork that they created. So it became almost like an album cover.
That's amazing. So your students are writing original lyrics, original music, applying their own music to it, instrumentation, and doing art interpreting their own lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. So what outcomes did you expect from rolling out this project as you were working with your students and thinking like, I think we have this incredible idea? What were you hoping that it would accomplish for your students?
I think initially we were hoping that they would begin to learn more about their social emotional self and learn ways that they could cope and use music and art in their leisure.
Yeah. So you start to roll out this project, and I'm sure innovation is always a little bit of a messy process, right? So what were some of the barriers you ran into as you were rolling this out and building this from scratch, and how did you overcome those?
Our first barrier was we've been with the district for 23 years and we don't hear no a lot. We are very accustomed to reaching out to the special education department and saying, hey, I need this piece of equipment or this art material, and always hearing yes, because they know that we do great work.
Yeah.
So our initial barrier was failing.
Basically, yeah. We wrote the first time when we wrote the grant, we did not get it. And we were disappointed and frustrated, but right away we started reworking it and figuring out what we needed to do to make it work.
We made a list with Lucille the night that we found out we didn't get the grant, and we met with her the next morning and started
The very next morning.
the very next morning.
Yeah.
We wanted to know what could we do and what more could we add to the grant or subtract from the grant to make sure that our students get the things that they need to be able to create at the highest level.
Yeah, I think we were really determined because we really care about our kids, and we need to show perseverance when we're trying to teach them perseverance. So it worked.
Yeah.
So what have you observed? What impact has your initiative had on your fellow teachers, your school, your students, your community?
Well, the work we did with our students is amazing, but we've also been able to do some of that same work with the staff here.
Really?
So they got to experience what the kids experienced. We did the mantra murals and the songwriting with them, and they did so incredible and they really enjoyed it. So that was a big impact for the building, that they got to experience what the kids were experiencing.
And it gave us the opportunity also to be able to showcase and share some of the deeper meaning of the work, with the students' permission, of course, the deeper meaning of the work that they were completing during art and music therapy that maybe the teacher or the paraprofessionals may not have noticed, or the student didn't talk to them about it. So it gave them a little bit more insight into the level of writing that we're actually doing in art and music therapy, because we do a lot of writing.
Wow. So if there are teachers right now who are on the edge of maybe considering writing a grant, they resonate with you, they've also identified need, or students are running ahead and they know they have to adapt in order to still engage them and impact them in the ways that they want to. What kind of tips or recommendations would you have for those teachers who might be considering doing something innovative in their classrooms?
I'll start, because I think I was hesitant to jump into the process, and that would be my advice. Just jump into it and get started, because the benefit is so great, it's worth it. So that would be my advice. Just get in there, get started. And Lucille is such an amazing coach and cheerleader, like you said. She just helps you right along the entire way and made it much easier for us.
That's amazing.
And I had gone to the GAR conference whenever they had it in person pre-pandemic.
Sure.
And that was where my fire was initially kindled and
Oh, wow.
burning into a flame. And then I came back and told Shenan, we should really think about writing the grant.
Well, I want to thank both you, Edie and Shenan, for taking the time to talk to us a little bit, for sharing the incredible work you're doing here, for the way that you're investing in the lives of students, and sharing your story as inspiring educators across Summit County and beyond. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Edie, for joining us and for that great project. As a reminder to our audience, if you do have questions, please type them into the to the chat box and we'll get those answered. Angela.
Hi, Edie.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, I was wondering, after you were able to implement your grant and see how the students responded to the work and the learning and the outcomes, what kind of things did you learn from this experience as it relates to your next steps? Like, what can you tell us?
One thing that we learned, especially in writing our second year grant, was that the students had a lot that they wanted to contribute to the grant. Once Shenan and I explained that the grant writing, that we actually had to write something to be able to receive these new amazing materials and the technology that we were granted. And so they became very interested in the process of grant writing. So we would read sections of the grant to them. And then a group of our core grant writers actually came and met with Lucille, and she asked them some questions that we were unclear of in our final grant meeting, and they gave some answers that we included. So that's definitely one thing we learned.
Incorporated student voice into the work.
Yes, and we named them as grant writers on the grant application.
That's awesome.
I love it.
I would just like to add that that is a first in doing this. These young children came and met with me, and they really encouraged me to give them this grant. And I said, I don't have anything to do with that part. But they knew what it had done for them, and they shared that unintended consequence. Edie, you and I have talked about that. What can you tell teachers who are listening of what they could do? I know you're a therapist in writing something like this. Yes.
I think even starting with that simple question of something I wish my teacher knew, that's an interesting question to have students really think about. And it's not a one and done, but maybe doing that several times so the students can start to disclose something that maybe they aren't able to say out loud yet. And just something I've noticed also with the grant writing process is that once we have started this project, there isn't anyone that doesn't want to be part of it with us. So other musicians want to be part of it with us. One of the unique things that we put into this cycle of the grant was that we wanted to, we didn't have time, we just couldn't bear thinking about doing professional development online again. So we wrote into the grant that we would have professional artists and musicians come in and do the PD with the students.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Edie. We'd like you to stick around if you don't mind. For the audience members, again, if you have questions for Edie, she'll be with us until the end, so feel free to put that in the chat.
Rick, could I just add
please.
one thing, because I have to brag? These kids performed at the House of Blues.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
It is.
Lucille, would you introduce our second project for
Oh,
us?
of course I will. Our second video, entitled Pathway to Peace for Norton Middle School, that began as an idea generated by a group of sixth grade girls. Dr. Jessica Russo, wonderful, and her team will share how mental health issues are being addressed through an educator initiative grant at Norton Middle School.
Hello, my name is Angela Carter. I am a member of the EIG committee, and I am here with an amazing staff here at Norton Middle School. I have Dr. Russo. Dr. Russo, if you can introduce yourself, let us know what you do here at Norton Middle School, and then we'll have the rest of your team do the same.
Sure, I'm Dr. Jessica Russo. I'm the 7th and 8th grade school counselor at Norton Middle School.
I'm Megan Zita. I am the 5th and 6th grade intervention specialist, and I teach math as well.
I'm Jackie McDonald. I'm the 5th and 6th grade school counselor.
I'm Brian Farson. I'm the superintendent of Norton City Schools.
So talk to me about the Pathway to Peace and how did it come about?
So as a school counselor, Jackie and I, Ms. McDonald and I are school counselors, and we ran a program, piloted a program back 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, pre-COVID, called Tom Talk, Tomorrow's Ideas Today, and it's just really about empowering youth to create change within their community and within their school. And the entire 6th grade students, they came up with ideas, and anybody that was interested in pursuing their idea into like fruition, they would come to Ms. McDonald and myself, and that's what happened. We had a group of girls that came to me and just said, hey, we're just interested in fulfilling this idea, and can you help us? And it just really started from that.
It started in 6th grade actually. It was a class that we took called Tom Todd, Tomorrow's Ideas Today, yeah. So we were in that class, and it was a class to ask what we could do to better help the community. And at first we were thinking a homeless shelter, but then we realized how many students we know that have been impacted by mental health and how we ourselves have been impacted. So So we thought that was a great idea to help our school, the people we know and our friends.
Tell me more about the things that encompass the pathway to peace that you felt was helpful for you and helpful for your fellow students.
I feel like nature itself is pretty calming and relaxing. So walking outside, running, a jog has always helped me. So I thought a lot of other people, it could help somebody else. So we decided a pathway would be the best way to go.
What was your hopes as it relates to the outcomes of the project?
Well, I think it was funny because when they first came to our idea, we were like, this is extravagant. They wanted to be, it was just over the top, their original idea. And so we kind of brought them down into reality a little bit and what we can do and how we can help them. And so when we really saw a vision is after we were meeting and we talked and we kind of zoned in on these are things we can do that we can successfully probably make happen with the help of the community, if possible, and with the help of the city, and with the help of our administration. On the support of our administration, we would be able to put this together, and with their help and everybody's help together, we were able to do that.
Excellent. What did you feel when they came to you with this idea? And I know that you have to be the ultimate person to say yes or no to move forward. How did you feel when they came to you with this idea?
Well, actually, this is my first year here in Norton. My predecessor was the one who kind of spearheaded the start of that. So we're very appreciative of that conversation. But through conversations with everybody, it's that open mind. You have kids with an idea, you have staff who are willing to support that idea. And I think anybody who's in an administrative role wants to support those kind of initiatives. When kids have great ideas, let's run with them and do great things. So I'm glad that my predecessors saw the vision of it and moved forward with it, and these ladies took it and ran with it. So it's awesome.
What about the other staff in the building? How did they feel about it? And have they taken advantage of the pathway to peace?
The staff has been just so helpful in putting this all together. We had like the businesses in town and some of our staff members go to the field trip and help the students learn how to plant and kind of oversee a lot of the project. So we had quite a few there. And a lot of them have actually been sponsors of the project through our brick purchases. So people could purchase the brick and then have like different engravings and things put in. And it was just awesome to see like them financially support the project as well.
That is so fantastic. What impact have you seen that this has had on your students, staff, community?
So between the Zenden and the Pathway for Peace, it's just been so awesome because in conversation, we realized that this group of kids is the height of the opioid epidemic. So there is a lot of social emotional needs in the children right now. So being able to provide them a place to go and focus on their mental health aside from the academics has been so important because then they can come back and focus on what's important in the classroom and come here to focus on themselves and getting themselves mentally prepared for the day as well.
Absolutely.
And I think post-pandemic too,
Yeah.
if we look at that, mental health is clearly on the rise, with our students, with our staff, and so it gives them the opportunity to have an additional outlet and gives the community with the pathway the opportunity to use the pathway as a place of de-stressing, relaxing, and just taking that break that they may need throughout their day.
I think one of the best things that came out of the project is the community involvement that came through. We had Dayton's Nursery donate a lot of time and a lot of things to us. And, one of their employees helped teach the fourth graders how to plant. We had businesses step up, we had the city step up, we had kids from elementary, middle, and high school all work together. So that was just fantastic to see the community pull together that way.
Excellent.
And we can even tie in our other communities because our Four Cities Compact program, which is our masonry program, which is Barberton, Copley, Wadsworth, and Norton. The masonry kids developed the entire, they did the pads for the benches, they did the entire flower garden, they put the bricks in, they put the cement sidewalk in, so they have contributed tremendously. So we're not just pulling in Norton, we're pulling in other communities as well.
What advice would you give to someone that is in the brainstorming stage of writing a grant for the EIG?
See if the mayor has a daughter or son.
It helps.
She was huge because I'm like, oh my gosh, we need this. Can you help text your dad? I need to, so it was helpful. But my advice would just be utilize people's strengths. I know she has amazing strengths that I don't have. I know that she has amazing strengths. I know that our administrators do. And so I feel like getting a team together that's going to be able to support you on what you're trying to do, but making sure that, you know, we are open-minded to everybody's opinions and collaborating together to come out with this project. This project could never have happened without everybody sitting here, without our community who was unbelievable, without our city administration, and without our students. I mean, it was truly, like Mr. Farson said, I mean, it was such a collaborative project that it just never would have been, you know, never been that. So my advice would just be making sure that you have a team, a committee around you that has various strengths to bring in all parts to the table.
Excellent.
And on top of that, talk to everyone about your plan, because you never know where that snowball is going to start. So through this whole program you've seen today, we're talking about future grants, we're talking about other grants that we've like built off of this one. The city's talking about what they're going to do now to like build off and sustain from that pathway piece. Like everybody's now like got their wheels turning just because a couple girls had an idea and brought it to somebody. So it's like, just talk to people, because you never know who's gonna buy in and who that like magic person is gonna be to make that thing happen.
And if I could check one more time.
Absolutely.
I have to say, I had like $1,000 PO purchase order to get flowers at Mark's. And Miss McDonald's like, you're just gonna get flowers at Mark's? I'm like, I'm just gonna throw them in there and that's our flower garden. And she's like, just hold on. So she's like, let me call Dayton Nursery. So she called Dayton Nursery, and then they just came out and they were just, you can tell that story. It was just such an unbelievable story, because my $1,000 for getting flowers would probably been dead the next day, because I don't know what the name of barely any flower is.
Absolutely.
And it changed everything, because with that phone call that she made, changed everything. Our 4th graders learned how to plant. We had a field trip. They designed our whole garden.
Jody from Dayton Nursery came out and really latched onto the project and loved it, and she designed the whole garden. She got Mr. Dayton to donate some of what we have out there, and they really made the one piece of the project flourish where it would not have been that great without their support and their knowledge. So you find the different people, like they said, you find people's strengths and you capitalize on those.
This is so amazing. All this started just from student voice.
Yeah.
Right.
Listening and then acting on making sure that you're engaging your students by hearing them and then acting on their ideas and then bringing everyone together.
Because it's easy to say, oh, okay, it's an idea, we're not doing, you know, that's good, great idea, maybe we can do it someday. But it does take a lot, I think, to step up and say, you know what, we're going to help these girls. This is what we do, we're going to help these girls. This is what we're in this field for. This is what our administrators in this field for. And so we just have the support. And I think when you have the support, it just can go a long way.
Dr. Jessica Russo, thank you so much for joining us today and introducing us to that great project. Team, what questions do we have for Dr. Russo?
Dr. Russo, I'm just so inspired by what you're doing at your school. Just a quick question for you. Most teachers are probably not going to build their own pathway piece, right?
That's true.
So what is the big takeaway? What can we learn as teachers that we can take into our classrooms and into our schools?
I think we have to look at the opportunities that kids present to us. And I think what that means is listening. Someone had mentioned listening to our kids and what they're saying and what they're asking for. And it doesn't have to be you create a pathway, but if somebody says, if you're seeing there are a lot of anxious students or what's going on, maybe you can create something in your room that can accommodate, your classroom or even a few of your students. It's just a few students can help many other students. And so when one student has a voice and we listen, I think it gives an opportunity for other students to come forward and provide, their concerns and maybe be able to trust our educators a little bit more because they're seeing things are getting acted on. And so I think just having the opportunity to listen to your students and trying to help them in the best way we can.
Awesome.
You know, Dr. Russo, having met with you many, many times, we were the catalyst, the EIG process, but I was amazed at what you were able to do with the community. Can you give teachers online here some suggestions that they can get their community together as you did?
Sure. I think the important thing is I didn't know the community very well. I don't live in that community. So I think it's important to find an educator within your school that's willing to buy into your project, whatever that may be, And if they know their community really well, it helps. And I was very fortunate in my case because the mayor's daughter works at our school. So in my case, I was very fortunate. So I had the city at my hands and, let them beck and call in some sense. But most people don't have that, obviously. So I think it's important to get somebody who knows the community very well on your team and see what the ins and outs of the community are. How can you reach out to people? I mean, when we started this, before Megan Zita was on this committee, I'm like, okay, just call businesses and see if we can get some money from them. I don't know. I didn't really know what to do. So I'm just trying to figure out how to fundraise money. And these the girls are calling from their cell phone and the businesses are like, no, you have to call from a school phone. You have to call, have your teacher call us. This is basically how it works. So I learned so many lessons along the way. But I think just having a committee that knows your community well will give you an opportunity to understand your community a little bit better. And I learned so much about the Norton community just by doing this project and how well so many people have come together. It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever experienced, just seeing the businesses come together, the city come together, and just people willing to help. And I would just post something on Norton Talks and people would say, I'll volunteer to do that. I can help with that. We can do that. And so just people coming together for the sake of this.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So
Sure.
I'm going to end with 2 questions for 3 people. The first question I'm going to ask Edie and Jessica. We've been talking today about adapting to the changing needs of students. So if you had to give one piece of advice to teachers listening, what's one piece of advice, either based on your project or not based on your project, for how teachers can help adapt to the changing needs of students?
Well, for me, I would say build a relationship with your students. Make sure you know your students, get to know it's not all about education. They're not listening to you if you don't have a relationship with them, if you're not getting to know them. If you have a relationship with your student, it can go so far. They're going to come to you. They're going to trust you. We don't know what their home lives are like, but they might be able to share things with you. You might be that one person that can help change their life. And I think we've had the opportunity to do that multiple times, just in this project alone, but just listening and having a relationship with your students.
Yeah, just a quick comment about that. The survey that I mentioned earlier in the webinar, 50% of students felt depression, anxiety, but the same 50% felt like they didn't have one adult that they could talk to in their school setting, which is really, really sad. So
yeah, it's sad.
Edie, what about you? What's one piece of advice you would share with teachers?
I completely agree with Dr. Russo that relationships are very important. It can be difficult sometimes to build relationships with students, but just finding out anything that they enjoy and finding a moment to enjoy it together, whether it's trying new food or whether it's listening to their favorite song that maybe tells you something about themselves, or looking at anime with them and enjoying something that they really like. And that can open the doors to communication, just getting to know each other person to person.
Now, that's a great piece of advice. And, to go back again to the TikTok research, it's interesting that, when teachers were willing to create TikTok videos, it did bridge some relationships. But even if they were willing to sit and watch TikTok videos with some of their students, that also showed that, their teachers may not be in the same generation, but they cared about what the students cared about. Thank you so much. And for those audience members, Jessica and Edie will continue to stay on. So if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A. My final question is for Lucille. Obviously, the projects had support from EIG, but talk a little bit about EIG grants and JR Foundation and what kinds of support teachers can get through this process.
Do you have 3 hours?
We don't, but we can try.
First of all, thanks, Dr. Ferdig, and the rest of this great team. I certainly hope that you have thought of a big idea or even a small idea to enhance teaching and learning in your classroom. Whether you've written a grant, whether you've never written a grant, I'm there. I'll be happy and honored to help you through this process. If you need me 5, 6, 7, 8 times between now and February 24th, I'm there. The applications are due February 24th by 5 p.m., not 5:01, 5 p.m. And the application guideline is available with all my information online and at the conclusion of this webinar. My phone number, my email, I will text you, I will call you, and I try to get in touch with you within 2 days. That's my mantra. If your idea encompasses just your classroom, you can ask for up to $5,000 from us. If you're applying for an all-school grant or a grant for your department or your grade level, you can come to us for $10,000. By the mere fact that you are listening to our webinar right now concerning lessons learned, it's obvious you want more for your students and yourself. You know your why you became an educator. We're your how, and hope to hear from you soon, because then you're going to be your wow. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lucille. I'm inspired. All right, friends, we were so grateful for you to spend some time with us and for all of you, for all of your wonderful advice, and for our guests that have joined us. Right now, we're going to post a survey. We've asked each attendee to fill out the survey. It's very short. And this is how we make sure that we get your contact hours counted and make sure that we send those out to you. So please take a moment. That survey is in the chat. In addition to the survey, we're going to stick around. So any questions that you have for us or for Edie or for Dr. Russo, please pop them into the chat and we're happy to answer those questions.
Excellent. We want to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Rick. Thank you, Lucille. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate you for being here. As a reminder, we will have our next webinar on January 19th, 2023, and we're going to be in person for our EIG conference, October 12th, 2023. And so we cannot wait to see you there. Again, we appreciate you. We thank you for coming. We hope that you learned something, that you're ready to go out and create and inspire. So thank you for coming and have a wonderful afternoon. Don't forget to do that survey.